Hello, and welcome to the Marketing to Engineers interview series. I'm McKenzie Burns, the Marketing Manager with CFE Media and Technology. And today I'm joined by Tracy Long, the Vice President of Communications from ABB's Global Nema Motors Division. Tracy, it's great to have you here today to talk about marketing to engineers.
Well, thanks, McKenzie. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start off with what is potentially an easy question and to kind of let people know a little bit more about you. So the question is, what sparked your interest in marketing?
Oh, wow. So I was going to be an accountant, actually. I went to school for accounting, and it really wasn't very as interesting as I thought it would be. But I took a consumer behavior class, and it really fascinated me, that theory of why do people buy the way they do. And so that was kind of my first toe in the water, and I actually swapped my major after that and went into marketing. It took me a long time to actually get to have a marketing job, but I'm really glad to finally be there.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
And then what trends are you kind of seeing in the industry lately in regards to marketing? So I know 2020 was kind of a strange year for everyone when it came to marketing. So are you seeing some of those trends continuing into this year, or are you seeing different trends emerging as, more marketing technology is being developed?
So I think 2020 was a huge learning experience for marketers from bedrooms all across the world, right? And we all tried to figure out how to do our jobs from someplace else and not get to actually see people, or not to get to actually, print things and deliver things. And so I think I know my team, we learned a tremendous amount of new things as we completely shifted gears. And so I think the trend we saw in 2020 was everything went digital. You didn't have to leave your monitor all 12 hours of the workday, because you could just get everything you wanted fed to you right there in that spot. I think from a marketer's perspective, it was fabulous. We could do everything that way. I don't know that customers in the long run were really happy with it. I don't know that as a consumer, that's how I want to be marketed to. So I think going forward, we're going to see just this really great hybrid now, because we went from paper things and in-person things to ebooks and webinars and videos and social snippets and some really great tactics. And I think we'll keep those as we bring back in the print again, and as we bring back in the face-to-face, because people still like to have that physical interaction of some sort. So I think we kind of swung the pendulum one way, and now I think we're going to kind of come back into the middle somewhere and see this hybrid of really great, fast, new things and some traditional things that always worked.
I love that, and I totally agree. So do you have any tips to offer anyone who is working on marketing or selling anything to challenging audiences, such as engineers?
One of the things I love about the research that you guys do is just that insight into that audience. It's very unique. It's very specific to the engineer's mind. And for most of us, we market to multiple audiences. So some are engineers, some are designers, some are users. So we have to really understand each of those audiences differently. So my first bit of advice is to really figure out what is it that they want to know, and not focus on what is it you want to say. Because if you say the wrong thing the wrong way, they're just going to shut down because they're not interested. So I think it's just really, really important to understand your audience, whether they be engineers or automation techs, that speak in their language about the things they want to speak about, and do it in the places they want to listen.
Awesome. And now kind of moving into different marketing tactics, I'm going to start with content marketing.
Okay.
And I was wondering what you think the most common misconceptions are about content marketing for, companies or individuals.
I think probably the biggest misconception is that you have to recreate content all the time, that you have to have something completely new and completely different year after year after year. And what I would say about that is that there are new engineers entering the workforce every day. When you cover the basics of something or the fundamentals of something, there is always a new audience out there ready to listen to what you've had to say. You know, what you told someone when they were 30, they may not need to hear it again when they're 50, but there's someone else out there now who's 30. So if you've got good timeless content, whether it be about processes or products or technologies, you don't have to recreate it. You might want to repackage it. You might want to recraft it a little bit so that it's slightly different in approach, but at the basis of good content can be repurposed and repackaged and reused for years if it's the right kind of material. So don't feel like you have to recreate the wheel every time.
Saves a bit of time too.
Well, that's our theory, at least. It's supposed to.
And then moving on to another topic for marketing, when it comes to lead generation, could you tell us a little bit about some tactics that you think have worked well for you or your team in the past, or even some tactics that you think are up and coming and will lead to success?
So we historically in our business used advertising and promotional activities for brand awareness. And we really started becoming more interested in the lead side of things in the not too distant past. So I would just say in the last couple of years, has it really been a strategy for us to actually go collect leads? Because unless you've got a way to nurture those leads or do something with them, they don't do you much good. So we've had to learn how to nurture. We've had to learn how to help our salespeople deal with those leads. So it's a learning process. And I think many of us think we're farther along than we are. And then we start realizing we aren't as far as we thought we were. But during the pandemic, one of the things that we ran across was an interactive ebook. It was a flip book style from a company called 3D Issue. And one of our other divisions actually got it first. They showed us what they were doing with it, which was the lead gen activities. And so we got a seat with them and we started playing with this ebook. You can flip the pages, but that you can also embed video, you can embed success stories, you can embed animations, you can pop out to things, you can stay in the book. But the longer that you're in there, you can track the activity and how many clicks are going to each type of content. And then we used the very back of that book as a lead gen form. It took you to a landing page. And so we ended up using this book, a couple of versions of the book, one to generate activity on a webinar series that we had, and then another one to get a subscription list going. And both activities, I think, worked really well. It took a lot of content to build the book, but the book ends up being this really great method to deliver all that content at once. And so we found that as people hung through the book, if it were 8 pages long or so, by the time they got to that back page, they did want to know more. They had read enough that they wanted to commit to the next step. And so the book has been very popular, high demand now. Everybody wants one for their stuff, but we really found it to be an interesting and different way to drive people's engagement through a little process and then kind of collect their information at the end.
I love that. I haven't heard of anything like that before. So that's
fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was neat.
And then moving on to branding, how important do you think it is to have a strong brand, especially going back to when you are dealing with an audience such as engineers, who are generally a little wary about trying brands that they don't know or haven't used in the past?
Well, it's critical. I'd say it's critical and it's hard to get. So we all know that something that you can rely on, something that's reliable, something that won't cause you to fail is what most of us would want to see. And we know that's what engineers want, right? They don't want to fail any more than the rest of us do. So you want to get spec'd in such a way that they know they can always pick your product and their solution and it's going to be safe for them and for their customer. But that takes a long time and it takes a lot of effort to maintain it because you have to perform consistently all the time. You know, the way you perform is a reflection on your brand. And if you don't perform once, that might be enough to get you knocked off the list. So having a strong brand means you stand behind what you say, you do what you say you're going to do, you perform the way you're supposed to, you're reliable, and that's the only way that you stay at the forefront of those minds. Now, we have younger generations coming up who maybe haven't built that brand loyalty yet. And so now you have to go out and prove yourself to those folks every day as well, and help them understand that there are products in the market that will meet their expectations, that they can rely on to make their job easier. But it takes a long time to get there, and it's good hard work.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then, do you utilize social media at all, or have you found that it makes a difference when marketing to the engineering audience?
We do use social media. We've got a fairly active LinkedIn page. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. And each social media channel has its own personality. It has its own follower grouping. So you know, obviously you post different kinds of content on each one. And I wouldn't say, you know, unless they're technical articles that we're sharing, I wouldn't say that I don't think we have a strong engineering following. I think if we participated in some different groups, that perhaps we could influence that and have a stronger connection there. But I'm not sure that I can say I see a lot of engineers following us.
Okay. That does agree with what we have done in our marketing to engineers research. So that is good to hear. And then just a final question for you. Could you tell us about a recent success story that you or your team experienced recently?
Well, I don't know if last May is recent, but I'll go back to how well my team adjusted. Everybody, you know, kind of flipped in and changed gears when we all went home last March. We were actually at ConExpo that week. We had built up a series of presentations. We had a theater. We were giving content out all day long. We had like 20 different presentations, and no one came to the show, and the show cut off a day early, and they sent everyone home, and we all came back and went, wow, what do we do? And then we realized we had 20 great presentations that had just been written, had just been revamped, were ready to go. And so the team very quickly put together a webinar series based on that content. And now, I'm not going to say that it was because our content was fabulous that we had a great turnout, because everybody had great turnout over the summer in their webinars until they all kind of died off. But we had a lot of engagement and a lot of interest, and we were able to repurpose that content. And so we found that to be a big win. We thought that was a great way. You know, I think historically we would have done those presentations once at the show, and then no one would have thought to pull them out again. So we did use them in the webinar series. We did get a lot of engagement. We did get some new leads and some new contacts. And we've actually now are starting to reuse that content again towards a podcast series that we're just now getting ready to launch in the US. So we're really excited to be able to take that expertise and hopefully get it out to people wherever it is they want to hear about it.
That's awesome. And you kind of said something there that made me think of one more question, so I hope you don't mind.
No.
Do you see the virtual world that we were living in last year? You mentioned how you're seeing webcasts kind of dying down. Do you think that is because there is quote unquote Zoom fatigue, or, you know, this virtual fatigue from everything? Or do you think that webcasts and online courses and everything like that is still a great way to reach engineers?
I think it is a great way to reach engineers. I think it always will be. I know that I think as people have gone back into their offices some, or as their schedules have started to change depending on where they live, perhaps we don't have the amount of time that we did before. So I think people will go back to being a little bit more selective of their time, of what they watch when. I also think, as you know, we're getting ready this next week to go back to our very first trade show in, 15, 16, 18 months, however long it's been now. So I think people will start going back to that new normal again, right? The hybrid world. And so they'll get that face-to-face interaction when they want to. They'll read the printed books when they want to, but I think there will always and continue to be a place for that digital learning also.
Awesome. Well, that is all that I have for you today.
All right.
I just want to thank you again for joining us for this
Thank you.
installation of the Marketing to Engineers webcast and interview series. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time
All right,
today,
thanks.
Tracy.
Appreciate it.